it was a lovely meeting, and I'm glad that we were able to get through the agenda. And I think being able to plan ahead is a wonderful possibility. Thank you very much.
I personally feel just a little manipulated. I was, not given the choices or the choice to speak the views that I had. I was given the option to choose from choices predetermined for me. And I feel like my voice that I came to use wasn't given as much credence as the partnerships of these nonprofits that are already here, standing up, presenting the program to me. And I'm having a very hard time just deciphering how they are so involved so early on in the process when this is being presented to me as a citizen as a new beginning stage program. So I feel very twisted today in that direction.
How would you feel about living in just like a big apartment building somewhere? Maybe a condo?
That would be pretty cool.
Huh?
It would be better than the place I stay at right now.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I thought it was extremely disorganized. The details aren't really there. I even tried reading a lot of stuff online. A lot of it seemed to be propaganda. And so I would like to be able to have more of these forums where details to these plans are actually presented and we're not sort of herded into like these, sort of predetermined choices in terms of their ideas of what our plan for our city should be.
If you make these transit villages and you make these transit housing in the way they're suggesting in these plans, it's going to make cities implement their general plans to entice people to move into these villages. So we're going to have these, what I call crowded housing. It might be called mixed use housing or something like that. But essentially it is. I mean, they will not force, right? But if that's your only option, isn't that, least number of choices that you get? I think it's a very wishy-washy area. And if we as citizens, if we as the people who want our representatives to make these plans did these things the way we wanted, instead of having Greenbelt Alliance, who is out there for their own agenda for whatever it is, making more transit trains, I think we get a better voice. But that's not what I saw in there. I saw a lot of one-way thinking in there.
I thought that they were kind of like these green people that are, what do you call it, kind of like sympathetic to civil liberties, like they'd look the other way if you were smoking pot or something. And then I get here and it turns out if there's all these other things you're doing they don't like, they would rule against you.
I don't know if you can do what they're trying to do, where it would work, and where it could protect freedom, because you don't have the freedom of where you can live where you want to live and work where you want to work. It seems like it takes away some freedom to be able to accomplish what they want to accomplish.
For people who could afford to have choices, maybe you guys wouldn't like it as much as people who aren't economically in a position where they could choose like you guys are. You probably own a big house, a big mansion. Whereas,
yeah, right.
The most important aspect of developing my community is business input, is private money, not government grants. But they're talking about $200 billion from the government grant. What we need is businesses that are local, that are involved in my locality. And there's no indication of any kind of business that was invited here to come and to comment their views. So
I don't think it's honest. I think they're actually presenting options that they already are limited to, or they want you to be limited to. And so they want to make you believe that it's your idea, that you had an input and that you came up with this stuff. And so then they use that report back or whatever they're doing as evidence that yes, this has a groundswell of approval, or we're not going to have many problems, or blah, blah, blah. So I think we put a wrench in that operation.
So welcome to You Choose Contra Costa County. I am Erica Wood, Vice President of Community Leadership at Silicon Valley Community Foundation. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what to expect this morning, but before I do, it's my distinct pleasure to have two leaders in Contra Costa County welcome you to You Choose this morning. We have Federal Glover here representing the county on the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, and Amy Worth representing cities on the Metropolitan Transportation Commission. And I'll let them say a few words of welcome and then we'll get going.
Good morning. You Choose Contra Costa County Your home, your future, your choice. Boy, what a wonderful opportunity. Today is our opportunity to make sure that our voices are heard, that we have the ability that when we look at our plan, that plan represents what we would like to see within our communities. So this morning, I'm glad to see so many of you out to participate in this process so that we make sure that the plan is our plan for our future here in Contra Costa County. So on behalf of the county and MTC, we welcome you here this morning. And now to come up is my colleague on the board, on the commission of MTC, is Amy Worth, who will give you also a welcome and some other information. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Federal, and it's an honor for me to join Federal in welcoming you to today's workshop with One Bay Area. And on behalf of MTC as well as our sister agencies, the Association of the Bay Area Governments, it is my real pleasure to welcome and to thank you very much for spending your Saturday morning helping our region and our county and all of our cities shape the future that we want for our communities. I'd like to introduce and thank some other elected officials who are here today. Joining you, Ann Chang from the El Cerrito City Council. Ann, would you mind standing up and waving? Jack Weir from the Pleasant Hill City Council. And also Linda Best, the Executive Director of the Contra Costa Council. And I want to thank them for being here today, too, for participating and listening to the thoughts from all of you as the workshop participants. Thank you for being here. As a local elected official, I'm frequently in the position of having to make tough decisions about how our city should change or grow. I face similar hard choices on the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, and Federal Glover and I, both as Contra Costa representatives, take very seriously our role in representing Contra Costa County residents and communities in the regional dialogue. So anytime I can participate in an early dialogue with members of the public in your view about how we can grow, I welcome it. And we are growing. The population of the 9 Bay Area counties is expected to grow from 7 to 9 million residents by 2040. That's enough people to fill communities double the size of Contra Costa County itself. So the question is not if we grow, but how we grow. What kind of Bay Area will we leave for our children and our grandchildren? Will they be able to afford to live here? Will they want to? How do we grow our communities in a way that respects local character, but that is sustainable and helps our region meet the goals for economy, the environment, and social equity? What transportation infrastructure will we need? What policies should we put in place to support sustainable growth? This morning you'll have a unique opportunity to provide some direct input to the agencies that are responsible for developing a long-range housing and transportation blueprint for our region. And the historic and important aspect of this plan, every 4 years we do regional transportation planning, but this is the first time we have substantively put together development, housing, land use patterns with transportation investment, with the goal of improving the quality of lives of the people of this region and reducing greenhouse gas emissions as targeted in SB 375. These agencies, the Association of Bay Area Governments, known as ABAG, and the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, MTC, it's a group of alphabet organizations, will adopt this plan known as Plan Bay Area by the spring of 2013. So you are getting an early opportunity to help shape that blueprint. MTC and ABAG have teamed up with the Silicon Valley Foundation and a group of nonprofit organizations known as Envision Bay Area to produce today's meeting. You'll be hearing more details from the Envision Bay Area team about the agenda in the moment. But on behalf of local and regional governments, I'd like to encourage you to engage. We need you to participate. We need your voice in helping craft this plan so it reflects your vision and dreams and desires for the future of our local communities as well as our region. In Contra Costa County, we have a little jump start on this process because many of you know and were engaged in the Shaping Our Future process a number of years ago, which was very foresighted in asking these same questions about how, as a county, do we want to grow in a sustainable way that provides the quality environment and communities where our residents can live and ensures the economic vitality of our county and our 19 cities and the residents that live there. So I particularly want to thank the Contra Costa Times, who helped fund our initial Shaping the Future effort and has helped us both on its editorial and its news pages to share the word with all of you in our county so that our community members and residents will know what's happening and can come and participate. I want to thank you again for being here and for your time and talent and energy for the benefit of your communities. Thank you very much.
Nicely said. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Federal. And thanks to all of you. Again, I want to echo my appreciation for coming out on a Saturday morning, Saturday before Mother's Day tomorrow, which you'll all be celebrating. So I want to say a few words about Envision Bay Area and then most importantly tell you what we hope to accomplish out of today's You Choose Forum. Before I do that, though, I just want to emphasize a couple of things that the two commissioners have shared with us, that in fact we are growing. Over the next 2 decades, the San Francisco Bay Area will add 900,000 new households, that's what's projected, and approximately 1.2 million new jobs. So again, the question is not if we grow, but how, and there are a number of questions that surface as we talk about growth. And I believe that embodied in those questions are a number of choices that all of you get to make starting right now, starting today, starting in this forum. The forum, along with many others that we're doing throughout the 9-county area, is part of Envision Bay Area, more words to remember, which is a strategic initiative led by Silicon Valley Community Foundation. And at the heart of this initiative is the belief and the goal that if we provide information and we engage people, we can make better decisions for the greater good. Today, we're going to be talking about some of those decisions as they relate to growth. We are fortunate to have a major grant from the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation that is supporting Envision Bay Area, which we greatly appreciate. We're doing this work in conjunction with a number of wonderful partners, and I would be remiss if I didn't take a moment and share with you who those partners are. We are pleased to be working with 2 great nonprofit organizations, Greenbelt Alliance and Transform, and if Greenbelt Alliance staff and Transform staff can just raise their hands, we'll acknowledge that you're here. Thank you. We're also very fortunate to have worked with a renowned urban planning firm, Calthorpe. A lot of the numbers that you're going to hear us talking about today, we have not pulled out of the air. There is a science and research base behind this. For those of you that are more data wonkish like myself, we have a detailed technical report in your folders that you can look at. In addition to those partners, it is our great pleasure to be working with our regional agencies, the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, fondly known as MTC, and the Association of Bay Area Governments, fondly known as ABAG. So what are we going to do in the next 2.5 hours together? First, we want you to have an opportunity to tell us the things that you really care about when you think of this place that you call home, when you think of your community. And we're going to do this using a really great tool called You Choose Bay Area. And You Choose enables you to be able to visualize the things that you care about, the kind of future growth that you think is needed for this area, and how your choices are going to affect the things that you've said are most important, like preservation of open space, water use, household costs, reducing carbon emissions, and public health impacts. So you'll be able to see that in a moment. The second thing that we want you to come away with today is an understanding of the larger policy context in which this work is unfolding. As you know, California as a state has many challenges. We are besieged with disappointing news every day around the budget. There are also some opportunities, and I would say one of those opportunities is the landmark legislation that passed, Senate Bill 375, to develop a sustainable community strategy, which is a fancy way of saying for the first time it's going to bring a number of important pieces together in a single regional framework. Those pieces include climate, housing, transportation, and other challenges that we need to deal with as we think about accommodating future growth. In this area, we're calling that process Plan Bay Area. The third thing we hope to accomplish today with all of you is that we want to give you a voice in this official process. We don't want this process to be the purview of the few, the purview of government agencies and elected officials. We want citizens, we want other leaders engaged in this process. And so I'm really pleased to see all of you here today. So you're going to have a chance right now to give your advice, your best thinking to the staff of the agencies that are responsible for putting this plan together. And I'll just ask that MTC and ABAG staff raise their hands so you can see how many of them are here today. Okay. So in true Community Foundation style, we have a very packed agenda. We believe in packing them to the fullest. We don't have a lot of time for questions and comments as a large group, and I want to encourage your questions and comments, and that the place for that will be in your table conversations, and we'll have plenty of those throughout the agenda. If you have a comment or question that you don't feel gets answered, we have a comment sheet on the table in front of you. Please feel free to jot that down. We're going to be taking a look at everything today. We have no breaks. We have no breaks. So please get up and take care of yourself as you need to. The bathrooms are out these doors and down the hall to the right. We have wonderful muffins in the back and coffee. So please help yourself as you need to. Every moment of this forum counts, so you cannot leave early. Did you hear me? You cannot leave early. And another reason why you cannot leave early, you may have noticed the camera in the back. This forum will air on CCTV on Tuesday, May 17th at 9 p.m. and Wednesday, May 18th at 10. So it'll look really bad if people leave early. We want a full room and engaged and exciting conversations, okay? And I know you're not going to be surprised when I say that we expect in these conversations today there are going to be different points of view. And we encourage different points of view. That's why we have brought together a diversity of participants. So it's okay to disagree, but not to be disagreeable. Okay? That's the only ground rule I'm going to put on the table. You each have a packet of materials. You also have a keypad polling device. Keypad polling devices, keep them with you at all times. You'll be asked later on in the forum to move to different tables for small group discussions. Please take your keypad polling device with you, okay? I have a couple of other elected officials to acknowledge that have joined us. Ron Leone from Concord City Council is here. Can we welcome him? Thank you so much for being here. And also Karen Mitchell, who's another member of the Contra Costa County Board of Supervisors in the back. Thank you so much. All right, so are you ready? Everybody ready? Have your caffeine? All set? Awake? Okay. Without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Dave Biggs of MetroQuest.
Good morning, folks. I just want to invite some of the people that are at the back to feel free to take a seat. Everybody's going to need a wireless voting keypad for the next segment, so make sure that you've got that. If you don't put your hand up, we'll make sure that you get one. Because what we're going to be doing for the first little bit of this segment is just kind of asking some questions about who's in the room to get a feel for the diversity that's represented. One of the big goals of this entire process is to engage as diverse a cross-section of the communities represented in the Bay Area as possible. So it's very important for us to know who's here, and it's also important for us to note who's not here, so we can make special effort to get to those community members that are not present here today. So is everybody ready? Has everybody got a keypad? Put your hand up if you don't. Terrific. Let's go, and we'll ask our first question here. Start off easy. So what you're going to do is you're going to look for either number 1 or number 2 on your keypad there. And we have 43 responses so far. I'll give people a little bit extra time getting used to those keypads. You can press it as many times as you like, but it's your last vote that counts. Yeah, so just to make sure, you can press it a couple times. We've got 61. That feels about right. Has everybody had a chance to vote? Okay, let's see. Okay, so even though the graph looks a little funny, 54% to 46%, that's pretty balanced. What is your age? So I know this is a visioning workshop. This is not what you want your age to be. This is actual age. All right, people are getting the hang of that. We've got 59 votes in so far. Okay. All right, so when we look at the demographics of the Bay Area, this isn't a bad representation. We've got a good amount of representation in 3 out of 4 of these categories. We're going to take note of the fact that we need to do a better job engaging the youth. When we're talking about the future, we're talking about primarily their future. When we're going out 30 or 40 years into the future, certainly it's very important for us to get the youth opinion on these issues. All right, so this one's a little small, so I'll read through this one. How would you describe your perspective here today? Number 1 on your keypads is business person. Number 2 is social justice advocate. 3 is environmental advocate. 4 is community member. 5 is health advocate. 6 is government. 7 is student or educator. And 8 is none of the above. Okay, let's see how we've done. Okay, well, we've done a pretty good job of recruiting a very diverse set of perspectives here tonight. The only one that's not covered at all is health advocate. So describe your neighborhood type. Number 1 is rural, 2 is suburban, and 3 is urban. I know some of these are judgment calls. If you have a hard time, just do your best here. All right. Okay. Not surprising, given where we are. Fair amount of suburban. And it's nice to have some rural perspectives here tonight, and 17% urban. So do you rent or own your home? Okay, very good. Healthy representation of both. What is your main commuting mode? And if you're retired and you don't commute, then how do you make most of your trips in a given week? Do you, number one, drive alone? Number two, car or van pool, which is having more than one person in a car or vehicle. Number three is public transit, and four is bike or walk.
Would you consider driving kids around a van pool?
It's more than one person in a car, so I would have to say yes. Me too. Okay, so 77%, just an interesting fact here, 77% is about the national average for vehicle trips. About 77% of all vehicle trips are made by single occupant vehicles, so you're right average with the national statistics. How often have you attended a public meeting or workshop on either transportation, land use issues in the Bay Area in the past? 1 is never, 2 is once, 3 is 2 to 3 times, and 4 is 3 to 3,000 times. Okay. Very good. Well, it's very nice to have some people here for their very first meeting about land use or transportation. Welcome, folks. We hope you stick with this. It's very important. Are you Hispanic or Latino?
What does that matter?
We're trying to figure out the representation of the community, and so we're trying to as much as possible ascertain to what extent are we representing the true cross section of the population with these workshops. Was there another question? Yes. Yes, there is. The next one is a huge list. Probably why we have this one on a special page. Okay. Very good. And the next one, as promised, is a huge list. So please indicate your race or ethnicity, and you can mark as many as apply. Number 1 is white, 2 is Asian, Indian, 3 is American Indian, Alaskan Native, 4 is Black African American, 5 is Japanese, 6 is Filipino, 7 is Chinese, 8 is Vietnamese, 9 is other Asian or Pacific Islander, and 10 is other.
And 10 is the 0 on the keypad, right?
10 is the 0 on the keypad. That's correct. Thank you. Okay. Not terribly surprising on that, but it's interesting to note that we have every single one of these categories represented tonight, but not probably in the proportions that we would aim to in a process like this. So we're going to have to do a really good job, and in fact we have a special process that's running parallel to this to try to get to some of the more diverse communities that represent the population of the Bay Area. All right. So now we kind of have got a sense of who's in the room. And now we're going to turn to a short segment using the tool called You Choose Bay Area. This tool has been created and as was mentioned in your handsets is a fairly detailed report on how these scenarios that are going to be represented in this next segment were created. They were created in a very thoughtful process to represent alternative futures of how growth could be managed and accommodated over the course of the next several decades throughout the Bay Area to accommodate this sort of projected population growth that is expected in a variety of ways. In order to evaluate those alternative future scenarios that we're going to be looking at, we thought it would be very interesting to get your perspective on how would you rate different priorities for measuring whether or not a scenario is positive or negative. So let's go into this next segment, and I'm going to give you a list of 14 issues that we hope represent some of the things that are on your mind in terms of how would you want to evaluate the future according to your own priorities. We understand that we're not going to have every one of your priorities on this list of 14, but we hope that we've got an interesting enough list to get a sense of how you would place these things. There is a worksheet in all of your kits, and I'm going to be making reference to the... Oh, sorry, it's on your table. So at the center of your table, probably, there's a worksheet. I'm going to be making reference to that a couple of times in the next half hour. It's very important that we hear from you on a couple of perspectives, and one perspective that we'd like to hear from you about is, what other priorities did you want to put on the table during this planning process that's being conducted over the next couple of years in the Bay Area? So, without further ado, here is the list of priorities. I'm just going to give you a few seconds to look through this list. What we're going to do in a moment is we're going to look at these one at a time, and I'm going to ask you to vote on a scale of 1 to 5. How high is each of these in terms of your own priorities? What I would encourage you to do is to use a variety of numbers from 1 through 5 on your handsets, because if you vote 1, which is high priority, every single time, we're not learning anything about you. So if you vote 1 on a few, and 2 on a few, and 3 on a few, and 4 on a few, and 5 on a few, it really helps us understand how would you rank these things. We understand that many of them are important to you, but we want to know what's most important. We're going to be looking at future scenarios, and we're going to be talking about trade-offs associated with future scenarios, because there is no slam dunk scenario which achieves all of these things simultaneously. We need to look at trade-offs, and we want to make trade-offs that are smart based on the values and priorities of the people in the Bay Area. So this is a great opportunity for us to learn a little bit about your values and priorities. Now, a confession. I put myself through university as a DJ, and so I have selected a little song to entertain you while you're voting on each of these issues, and I've chosen the song to kind of get you in the mood of the issues that we're talking about. So hopefully you're entertained by it. We're going to go on to the first one, which is clean air. So what I'm going to get you to do in a second is, on a scale of 1 to 5, where 1 is high priority and 5 is low priority, I'm going to get you to vote on clean air. How important is this among this list of 14? You ready? Here we go. It's not accepting the responses again. This happened to us before. One moment, please. There we go. Here we go. Number 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 on your handsets, please, folks. Okay, we got 57 in, almost all of us. Probably about 61 in the room. Okay. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to create an average for all of these, and then we're going to rank and sort them so we can look at scenarios according to your own priorities. So this one has got, interestingly, people have used all 5 buttons, so there's people voting all across the spectrum on clean air. Let's look at the next one. The next one is conserving open space.
In the field of opportunity, it's plowing time again. There ain't no way of telling where these seeds will rise or when.
I don't understand the question. What do you mean by conserving open space?
So open space is sort of defined as anything that it does not currently have development on it. So it would be defined as agricultural areas or natural areas that don't have urban development on them, either industrial, commercial, or housing.
Government open space, or are you talking about private open space? People's private property? Like eminent domain?
It's both. If in the case of agricultural land, that would be typically held in private hands. And so what happens with development is over time, certainly over the course of several decades, farms get turned into suburban housing and so forth on a regular basis. And so it would be, to what extent are we conserving open spaces, whether it's agricultural areas or natural areas in the Bay Area?
So it stays private as long as it's not developed. Like when we're talking about you saying like farms then being developed into urban housing.
That's right.
Using this as a high priority would be maybe you want to keep them from even doing that.
That's right.
Okay, like the government stepping in and keeping them from doing that. Okay.
Exactly.
So what happens to infill?
Like if I had a family farm, and I mean, I wouldn't want to sell it, but if I did, and I was gonna, I don't know, have some ugly, I don't know, like a Walmart or a high-rise, you're saying if it's a high priority to conserve open spaces, we'd want to implement something to where they would discourage me from selling it? Okay.
Right.
So like someone who built a Walmart or something, or like a high-rise?
Well, this section is about your priorities. We're going to get into creating alternatives where we're going to be experimenting with different policies, such as those policies. And especially during the next segment of the workshop following this one, where we're going to actually be rolling up our sleeves and looking at particular land uses. So this is really about how much of a priority is conserving open space. Then we're going to move on to experimenting with different alternatives.
You could also sell it to like a nature conservancy or something that could
Well, no, I know. I was
Excuse
trying
me,
to
how
figure out.
come you want the government to set a priority of controlling how people use their property? Is that what you're saying? Is this what this is all about? That's what this question is about.
So the question was, are we expecting the government to set a priority about conserving open space?
About how people use their personal property. So if somebody owns the property, then we're saying that we're voting for the government to be able to take over this person's property.
Right.
Is that what this is all about?
Can I make a point here? I mean, there's other ways to conserve open space that don't have anything to do with government, and that's what we may get into. But conserving open space also means that, you know, maybe there's a local initiative that, well, I guess that is a government action if it's an initiative.
Is the government controlling your property?
Okay, folks. I'll respond to these questions, and I'm going to have to move along. This is not a policy setting session. This is about learning about what's important to you. Let's leave the policy making session to later parts of the workshop, where we're actually going to be discussing how to meet the priorities that you've identified. But right now, we're trying to learn about what your priorities are, not what you think the government's priorities need to be in terms of policy. But if conserving open space and others come out on top, then that's certainly going to inform the next segments of the workshop, where we're going to be experimenting with different policies. So let's just learn about what's important to you and how you would rank these things and move forward. So, sorry? Lower the volume? I can't do that, but a technical person, I would have to leave my station.
I wanted to actually ask you about lots in urban areas. If you have a vacant lot in an already urbanized area, where would that be considered conserving open space?
Okay, the question was, if there's a vacant lot in an urban area, would it be considered open space? If it's a vacant lot in an urban area, that would be an opportunity for infill and not conserving open space. So there's judgment calls in there, but typically if it's surrounded by urban development, it would be an opportunity for increased infill development.
But infill does conserve open space, right?
That's right.
Yes,
That's right.
so that's what I'm trying to get at.
Okay, so we've got 58 votes in here. Again, quite a diversity of voting on that one. The next segment is conserving water. How important is conserving water in this scheme of things? Okay, go ahead and vote again. So if you get in one of those little circles, then we need to re-vote on these things. All right. Thank you. Again, quite a diversity on that question. Convenient access to jobs.
Excuse me, why do you have a light rail there? A picture of light rail. Why do you have a picture of light rail when they are so...
One moment. I've got your question. Let's just wait until the song's finished. So we had a question, why do we have a picture of light rail there? I think it's probably trying to capture the fact that a lot of job centers are in and around urbanized areas, and so we didn't mean a whole lot by it, but just try to capture that.
San Jose's light rail system is carrying 0.2% of people who otherwise would have driven. 0.2%. In other words, if you subtract the people out who would have taken the bus, it's negligible. What the effect that it has. Why waste money building that instead of improving the bus service?
Great question. The worksheets that you've got in front of you are for putting all of the kind of comments that you have today. Unfortunately, because we have a fairly packed program, we can't be fielding all of the questions that this would be raising. But those kind of questions, those kind of comments are exactly what we want to read about on those worksheets. In addition, the third segment of this workshop is going to be about rolling up our sleeves and working with other folks at our table to discuss these strategies moving forward. And we want to hear, each one of those tables is going to have one of our facilitators, and we want to hear that discussion and those comments.
So if we live in sort of like a scary...
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Would driving be considered high priority? Like if we wanted to drive because that's convenient versus light rail, would that be considered high priority for us? Like how we should vote for this question?
Can you repeat the question?
So like I work in Richmond. It's not exactly a place I want to be getting off the BART at. So I drive. That would be considered more convenient for me in that case. Would I then say that this is high priority or low priority if I did not want to take, say, the BART?
So the question was about the if he's working at a BART station, would it be convenient access to transit if it wasn't located very nearby, but it was located in a convenient place to access via transit?
If it's located in a place that's not convenient by virtue of being a dangerous neighborhood, you wouldn't want to be like walking from, like in a safety perspective. Is safety considered part of this convenience?
These are to be interpreted your own way. If you interpret convenient access to jobs as a high priority, however you define it, then it's a high priority. If you define it as a lower priority, it's a lower priority. Okay. And I'm sorry, I'm going to have to move on. I know you guys are eager to jump into the discussion part of it, which we've got plenty of discussion time planned, but I'm not going to be able to field all of your questions during this segment because we do need to move on and get this session going. Daily needs close to home. Okay. All right, quite a diversity there as well. Easy and low-cost parking. Okay, that's the first one that the majority are voting for low priority.
What should we do with this data? What's the next step that you have when you take all this data? Where will this data go? Will we ever see it again?
So the question was, what are we going to do with this information? Well, right now what we're going to do with this information is we're going to be creating a hierarchy of the priorities of the folks in this room to be used to inform our evaluation of alternative future scenarios. in this entire process, we're going around to different parts of the Bay Area and we're collecting priorities. And we're going to take all of the priorities that we've gathered and try to inform the plan moving forward and the discussion moving forward with those highest priorities that were identified.
We are making sort of an assumption about what people mean when they put in a certain choice.
That's right. That's right. And so the idea of that you're making your own assumptions about these things, one of the reasons we have these worksheets in front of you is to understand your personal perspective on these issues. Because we have to move forward in the workshop and keep the pace going. We can't explain all of these things personally. And we assume that you have a diverse set of viewpoints and a way of interpreting these things. We want to know what's important to you and how you would describe what's important to you on your worksheets.
Information from different towns and cities, but working together as a coalition and trying to create something that works. I mean, are we having a larger voice in our own community, or are we just having a small voice in the bigger picture?
So the question was, by voicing our concerns here, are we having a smaller voice in the bigger picture or a stronger voice within our local community? I think the regional plan is really meant to be a tapestry of the values and priorities of the diverse population that makes up the entire Bay Area. We realize that it's not a one-size-fits-all kind of process, that we have to understand as you move to different communities around the Bay Area, there are different priorities. The reasons that people live in Contra Costa are different than the reasons people live in San Francisco. The priorities that we hear from place to place will inform how do we interpret the regional plan locally in a way that both meets the needs of people throughout the region as well as meets the needs locally. That's the art here. And I'm sorry, but I'm going to be ignoring hands moving forward because we do have to keep going. And we're already behind schedule. It's not that we don't want to hear your input, it's just that we have a lot of presenters that are after me, and I want to be respectful of their time as well. So, keep my town as it is today. Okay. Very diverse set of voting there. Large homes with big yards. Okay. Less driving.
I'm so confused. I just have to ask. I have no idea what's going on. I mean, if we want to live in a cool place where we can all get to BART and it's kind of smaller and there's more little houses, what if I want that, but I also want a house with a big yard? I mean, which thing am I supposed to choose? I don't understand what I'm even filling out there. No, I mean, if I want a nice house with a yard and nice air, doesn't that completely conflict with a place where it's small enough and close enough? Like, downtown Concord's cute, but the yards are really small. They can walk to BART and they can walk to the coffee places and the bookstore. But then again, if I live out in Clayton, I'm just so confused now. I'm sorry.
The fact that people are having difficulties with this represents the fact that this is difficult. When we talk about future scenarios, we are cognizant of the fact that there's trade-offs that we need to make, exactly like the trade-offs you're talking about. If we all live in big houses with big yards, then we're not going to be close to access to transit and so forth. Yes, there are trade-offs associated with it. We want to be as informed as possible with what kind of trade-offs would you be interested in making moving forward. This part of the workshop is not about making those trade-offs. This part of the workshop is about setting our priorities. The next part of the workshop, we're going to be wrestling with some of those trade-offs.
So if it's a greener world and it's better with cleaner air,
I'm
asking, I don't understand which is even the better scenario. If it's better for the environment,
I'm sorry.
I'm going to have a smaller yard that we should be on? Yes. No, I really don't understand. Okay, we can't resolve your ambivalence. Well, I don't understand. Thank you for
okay.
that. I just don't know what my party should be even.
trust the process. There's going to be lots of time for discussion, and there's going to be a facilitator at your table that's going to take you through all of this moving forward, okay?
Okay, sorry. It's just the air does look nicer and clean.
So less driving overall. Okay. Less local traffic. Less local traffic. Okay. Last few, lower carbon emissions. Quick vote on that one. Lower costs and taxes.
Costs of what?
This is household costs. So
What does that mean? We pay more taxes minus our costs. Yeah. Right? So it's sort of inversely related.
this is about household costs. We're looking at housing, transportation, general taxation, and so forth. So the major line items of household costs. So how cost sensitive should we be versus other programs that we would be looking at?
But everybody always wants lower costs and taxes regardless. How does this equate to what you're talking about?
Well, let's find out.
Well, it's a loaded question.
More affordable homes. Okay, and the last one, safer access to schools. Okay, so now we've gone through our list of 14 priorities. We realize that there's priorities that are on your mind that we've missed. There's an opportunity for you in the box on your worksheets to identify some of those, so we can put those in the next sessions that we're planning. For now, we're going to look at how we would rank these things with our votes in the room to get a sense of what's more important, what's less important to folks here tonight, or this morning. So, we ready? So Margot has tabulated the results here. So we're going to drag these around and put them in a list of order from the lowest priority to the highest priority. So, Margot?
Easy and low cost parking is the lowest.
Easy and low cost parking.
Large homes, big yards.
Large homes with big yards.
Keep my town as it is today.
Keep my town as it is today.
Less local traffic.
Less local traffic.
Lower costs and taxes.
Lower costs and taxes.
More affordable homes.
More affordable homes.
Safer access to schools.
Safer access to schools.
Less driving overall.
Less driving overall.
Conserve water.
Conserve water.
Conserve open space.
Conserve open space.
Daily needs close to home.
Daily needs close to home.
Lower
lower carbon emissions, clean air, convenient access to jobs. So there, according to the votes that we've just rendered, is one look at these priorities. This tool that we've just been playing around with is online. I'm going to give you the address at the end of this segment, and you can go and you can look at these in more detail. You can actually vote on them personally, how you would rank these things. You can identify what's missing, and you can play around with the next segments, which is going to be looking at some different alternatives for how to manage this growth, and we're going to be seeing the results according to these priorities. So, we've got a couple of options here for managing growth. Now, we're going to start this this session is designed to go from the general to the more specific. Right now, we're going to look at some general patterns for how to manage growth. And we realize that we're not going to have all of the detailed choices that you're going to want. We're going to get to that in the third segment of this morning. But what we want to do is just have you weigh in on, if we had to pick between these choices, what would be your first choice? And we're going to be doing this and making a scenario based on your choices and looking at the future scenario according to the priorities that we've just identified. And then we're going to be experimenting with different options and coming back and voting again. So don't worry about it too much, because we're going to be looking at the implications of different scenarios and then voting again. But in the first time around, how would you vote on these questions? So the first question is, where do we build? So we've got a...
How do you export a house? You put it on a van and move it somewhere? I don't understand. How do you export a house?
Excuse me, can you, please, can you be more respectful? I'm going to explain these things, and then if you've got questions based on my explanation, then I'm happy to answer those questions. Okay, so the first question is, where do we build? So we've got a couple of options here. The first option is called export new homes, and so what we're saying here is that some of the new growth, some of the new commuters, which is one of the things that we're really interested in, will be located outside the existing 10 county area. So we've got 319,000 new commuters being located outside of the existing urbanized areas that we're looking at in the Bay Area. The second option here is keep new homes within the existing set of counties that we're looking at in this plan. And so we've got two options there. Obviously, the reality is going to be a little bit of a mixture of both, but if you had to pick one of the two of these, which would be your first choice in terms of moving forward and looking at the scenario? Yes?
When you put it outside the area, you'll build a business park there so they can work in their own community outside the area. Where I live, about 1 in 5 houses is empty because of repossession. And so there's no need to build any more houses in my neighborhood, but if we build it outside the area, will there be business parks and places for them to work where we build it?
Right, it's a great question. So the question is about where are people working? So if we're putting homes outside, are we also putting jobs there? There is some attractiveness of the homes to jobs, and we're actually looking at where are we developing new jobs primarily here. We're assuming that the jobs will be located both inside and outside, but they'll be more attracted to areas outside if there are more homes located out there. If we're keeping homes here, they'll be more attracted to be located closer into the existing urban area. Yes, sir?
The moral authority of even asking the question.
Thank you.
Where are the property owners in this process? Are there representatives here, property owners?
Sure.
Yeah.
We're very much hoping to engage the property owners in this conversation. That's why we're taking
But
these
you
questions
have.
out to the community.
I'm a property owner. You have engaged them.
Right.
I'm a property owner, and it's so hard to make these choices. I want a small house and a big yard. I want to save school, but I have to drive my kids to school. I mean, it's very interesting that I'm concerned about the data that you're collecting under the auspices of let's keep it general. Because it's not about, your data is not about being specific, and it's about specifics.
It's very true that we haven't got the resolution of the sophistication of the questions such that every person would find the perfect option here tonight. What we're trying to do is we're trying to entice you to have conversations with folks at your table about the the choices that you would make and the options that we might consider moving forward. These are some pretty basic buckets to put our choices in to entice a conversation about what if. And so the kind of conversations that you're starting here this morning are exactly the kind of conversations that we need to have on the table as early in this planning process as possible. This is meant to entice exactly this kind of debate and conversation. So those kind of questions that you're asking are exactly what we're here to do. All right, so the second question is, regardless of where we're focusing development, whether it's within the existing set of counties or outside and inside the counties, it's how will we grow. We've got a couple of options here. The first option we call business as usual. It's a bit of a funny option because it's really looking at historical trends and just simply accommodating growth based on the same sort of development that we've had for the last 20 or 30 years. The second option is plan future, where we're looking at the sort of the existing plans throughout the Bay Area and following that. As we move up this spectrum from business as usual to plan future to more urban to most urban, there's a couple of things that are going on. At the most urban end of the spectrum, it gets to be more compact. We're introducing more multi-family housing. We're introducing smaller lots. We're focusing on more urban style of development in and around the existing development wherever possible. And we're also focusing on transportation amenities that would encourage people to use more alternative forms of transportation. So it's a package of the more compact with more transportation alternatives as a focus at one end of the spectrum, the most urban, and at the other end of the spectrum is a lower density style of development with more focus on automobile-oriented community development. So let's go in and look at these first set of choices quickly and take your votes on those, and then we'll look at some future scenarios and we'll look at a whole range of options, and then we'll cycle back and we'll do the questions again.
Go back to the plan future one. I just wanted to read that one again.
Sure.
That's like your guys' plan that you guys are sort of asking us about, right?
That's right. So this is consistent with the MTC and ABAG plan moving forward.
Are we voting on the first or the second?
We're going to vote on both of these options in a moment.
I still don't understand what you mean by exporting a new home. Exporting it.
So exporting a new home, don't get too hung up on the language here, but essentially what we're talking about in exporting new homes is that some of the new development, out of about 1 million new commuters, 320,000 of them will be located outside of the existing set of counties. And so by exporting, I mean, it's a little bit of a funny term, but essentially we're saying that we're locating more development outside of the existing set of counties than in the other scenario. Well, it's a what-if future scenario. What if we located 320,000 new commuters outside of the existing set of counties, and what if we kept them here? The second question is, what if we focused on more or less compact development, and what if we focused on more transportation alternatives or less transportation alternatives? Yes, sir.
We need an input on what the jobs are, because I work where the job is, as close as possible. So we need a lot of input from the business people that need jobs. Where the jobs are, that's where most of the people centralized are. So I mean, this input from us is a bunch of hogwash.
So the question is, we need input from the business community, and we could not agree more. It's very important for us to not only understand where housing is, but also where jobs are.
Well, that's most important.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, but I live where I can afford a house, and I can't afford a house in San Francisco where the job is, so I've got to move, farther out to where housing is affordable.
Right. So we're talking about the affordability of housing as well, and of course, the more we constrain development, the more lower property values and so forth get propagated.
So wait, lower supply is lower costs?
So I'm on the, well, anyway, I won't say that, but one of the questions I have, and I want to clarify, is that the growth, the expectation of new homes that ABAG has set forward assumes that coincides with the number of jobs that are needing housing there. Can I just make that clarification that this assumes that the jobs, we need new homes because there's jobs available for those new homes?
So assuming we do have job growth.
So the question was, I mean, a lot of what we're talking about is about the jobs housing balance as you move throughout the region. And so as we develop, it's really about getting that right. If you get the jobs housing balance in different parts of the region right, then people will have an opportunity of living closer to work. And so that's absolutely something that over the next 2 years is going to be a key part of the discussion.
Excuse me, I'm a realtor, and I have a problem with us telling people that they can't build on their own property. That is a problem. It's private property. It's part of that's part of our constitutional values for people to have and be able to do whatever they want with their own private property. And for us to sit here and say they can't use their own property and you're calling it open space is somebody's private property. I have a really big problem with that.
Right, so the comment is...
I wouldn't want someone to tell me when I buy a piece of property that I can't build on it.
Right, so the comment is, how can we tell people that own a piece of land, that own a property that we can't build on it or we are going to build on it? How can we make those decisions? And that's really one of the toughest things about regional planning is that we have a whole group of people here who may or may not want to be conserving open space and essentially meaning that...
Property rights. I mean, I have a home and I wouldn't want somebody to rezone it. We were just talking about that here. I don't want my house rezoned. I found a house, I fixed it up myself, and I landscaped it. I did everything to make my house beautiful and a beautiful home for my family. And I would be disgusted if I put that much effort into an old house to redevelop it, and then somebody come and tell me, well, we've decided that this is going to be something else. That would make me very sad.
Right, and
that's what they're going to do.
I think these points that you're making are critical because it's about the...
I have a great neighborhood with wonderful families, and we've all done a great job of planning it ourselves and refixing it up and doing things for it. So I'm getting really concerned about it.
Hi, folks. I'm Joanna Bullock with the Association of Bay Area Governments. Can I just...
Yes, they do.
This is a visioning process. I'll wait until you're done.
Is the end result that if more people vote for like that kind of house than her kind, then it wouldn't matter that it's like a majority rules, like a democracy thing? I'm just asking if the end result of all this data is if more people want that than like her house, would the end result be eventually that she just gets outvoted and for real?
Yeah. Okay.
Well, I mean,
I'm going to take this back up to the 30,000-foot view because that's where we are. We're in a visioning process. We are regional agencies, ABAG and MTC. We look at this, we look at the 9 Bay Area counties as a region. The specific land use policies that get made in your specific jurisdiction are up to your specific jurisdiction. Now, we are working with your jurisdictions. We're working with your elected officials. We're working with your planning directors. We're working with your congestion management agencies to figure out all of this complex priorities. But we're here today to get a sense of what your priorities are. We can't get into the details until we know what your priorities are. Then we can start to talk about the specifics of how to make that happen in a way that balances interests.
I think that the thing that I find, just hear me out. I mean, this is supposed to be a community thing. So I'm just thinking the priorities are the details. You know what I'm saying? I mean, the details are the priority. I'm sorry, I said that wrong. I mean, that's a priority to me, all these little details. And just this grand scheme, and then to run with it just makes me very nervous. And I moved to this area because I like the big backyards and things like that.
We are only equipped this morning to deal with the priorities that are up on the script. Those are the priorities we're going to look at this morning.
But your priorities are violating private property rights.
Then that is a discussion for you to really have with your locally elected officials and your planning directors. We're here to talk about and to get a sense of what
I came here to have an effect on my local government. This is Contra Costa County. So I came here to have an effect on government, okay? Are you telling me this is a regional effort, and then this regional effort is then going to somehow explain to our local cities about how we are going to plan our local cities? Some like recommendations or something like that?
We are here.
How is this, that, like you said, AB 375 or something, how is that going to actually get implemented in our local cities?
And that is what we're trying to figure out. This is not a small task. This is a huge undertaking. There are 9 counties. There are 9 counties, 7 million people. Just let me finish. Let me finish.
Tools that you would like to use to implement your vision. What is it how is it you're open to leverage?
We're thinking about that, but we're not there yet. We're not there yet. We're truly not there yet. Again, we're here this morning to look at a set of priorities. Once we establish what those are, we can begin to fill in the details and talk about the details. As I mentioned, we are working with your planning directors. We are working with your elected officials to make this happen. And again, we came here this morning to get some sense from you of what your thoughts are and what is important to you. Once we get that data, we can start to work on the details. I mean, you all understand what a plan is. You have to have a general idea of what it is you're trying to accomplish before you can work your way down into the details. That's what we're doing this morning. There will be an opportunity for you in your small groups at your tables to start having these types of conversations and expressing some of the concerns that you have. But can we allow our facilitator to get us through this so that we can get on to the next? And I can't, and this is not a...
There's going to be some kind of a vote, and I want to know if the end result is whatever we all decide, some people are going to get outvoted. That's what I asked you. Whatever
this process, okay. We're not here to vote on a specific this morning. The plan that we are working on right now will not be adopted until spring of 2013. It is what? Spring of 2011. We have 2 years to work on this. And again, we're up here at the 30,000 foot view. When we finish this particular exercise, you will be able to break into small groups and have some more specific conversations. But could you do us a favor? Could you use your comment form?
I came here to learn what it is you're trying to even do. I mean, I don't even understand what's achievable, so I'm just trying to come here to learn.
Madam Speaker, if you start at the 30,000 foot level with a vision, and it's not grounded in realities at the bottom, then you're going to end up with answers to your questions that create a false vision that can never be implemented.
Yes. Local defines county. County defines state. Within that process, MTC and ABAG operate at our whim, the citizens. So the local gets to determine that, not MTC and ABAG get to determine what we do. I think that's what she was saying.
Our county is very large. We had to drive a long ways to this meeting. So one meeting in our county doesn't give very good reflection.
And we will be back this fall with a more detailed scenario, and we'll be back in 2013 with a final scenario. You will have other opportunities. You all are asking questions that are wonderful, but you haven't really given us a chance to present our stuff. You know, we're trying to present our stuff.
What is your stuff?
If you just give us a moment, and as our facilitator asked, if you have some comments, please write them down. Please write them down. We have a specific period of time this morning to meet. We're already at the 10:30 point. We would like to get through this. We want to feel, this was not designed to field all your questions. It wasn't. And for that, I will...
You're asking us to vote on things that we don't agree with.
Then don't vote on them.
Based on stuff that we don't agree with.
Then you have the prerogative not to vote on them. But this is...
It doesn't count, then I don't have a voice. It's the options you're giving.
It isn't. I don't want to the case that you don't have a voice.
you're not giving us a choice to say we don't like any of them.
But you know, we've been working on this for about
That's
6
right.
to 7 months, and we don't have the prerogative at this moment in time of changing this
You've been working
to
on 6 or
suit.
7 months, and you've got a 30,000-foot view, and you want us to vote on something that we don't have enough information.
You know,
to
if you
vote
feel
on.
like this process is not helpful for you, then please write that down on your comment form and tell us
I'm
what
telling you.
would be. But what I'm saying to you is this is a very packed morning, and we don't have time to field all the questions.
You
We have
asked
time
for
to get through this
You asked
process.
for public input, and we're giving you public input, okay? That's what we came here for.
But you're sabotaging our chance to give you input,
But
and I'd love to have the movie.
I
the
understand
meeting
what
move
you're
on.
saying, and what you have an opportunity to do is write down that you don't like our process.
The rest of
That
our
you have an opportunity to do, but
by
this
holding up
is
the
our
process.
process as we designed
What she
it.
had to say, because I didn't even understand what was going to happen until she said that thing.
Can I make a suggestion? Why
Certainly.
don't you just go through your slides?
I didn't know you couldn't build on
Not
property.
continue to vote, because some of these questions are loaded in that. For instance, I would say not export new homes and keep homes here, 1 or 2. The combination of the 2 is probably realistic. We don't have time to finish this anyway, voting. Why don't you go through it, show us the type of things that you want, and do another meeting at some time where we can vote. Because it's obvious we're not going to, if we have to vote, it's too disruptive at the moment to do this.
I would concur with that.
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, we're losing our chance to vote. I'd really like to keep going.
You get more chances.
Okay.
We're too uninformed to vote right now.
Are you a member of the group?
I'm a citizen in this area.
Okay,
It
so
concerns
did you
me
sign
too,
up?
okay?
Okay. Whoa.
All right, folks. How we doing? Should we stand up and take a stretch break? Let's take a 30-second, just stand up in your seat, take a stretch, shake up the energy. All right. All right, now don't go too far. In a minute.
Constitutional right to have a regional government. That's what this is all.
All right, can I, is everybody back? All right. So it's Saturday morning and you all are awake, and this is probably the most spirited conversation we've had in our forum so far. And I want to thank people for putting their questions out. I want to thank people for the concerns you've raised, and I just want to acknowledge that there's some tension in the room here. I'm going to ask you to sit with that tension for a bit. We are going to shift gears, and based on the comments and concerns and questions that you've raised, what we'd like to do, if it makes sense, is move to the next segment and give you more specifics about this planning process that we're in. You heard Joanna mention a couple of dates. We want to have the opportunity to walk you through Plan Bay Area and where we are at right now at this moment in time in the process. We're at the very early stage. And public input is very critical to this early stage, and it will be to later stages in the process. So we're going to have our partner from Greenbelt Alliance come up and give you that overview. You've been asking for it. You want to know what it is, what's happening. And then we're going to allow you to have table conversations around the specific choices related to how we grow. We're going to allow you to have table conversations around the policy options that will support that. Okay? So if I could have Matt Vander from Greenbelt Alliance come up, he'll give you more details.
All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Matt Vander and I'm the senior field representative for a group called Greenbelt Alliance, and I manage the East Bay here for Greenbelt Alliance. So I wanted to give you some introduction this morning for what this next exercise is going to be. Do I have a clicker?
Can you tell us what Greenbelt Alliance is? I've never heard of you guys before.
Yeah, please. What's your mission statement?
Take as much private property.
All right, and I'm going to start with a quick story.
Excuse me, can you tell me who Greenbelt Alliance is? Honestly, I've never heard of you guys before.
And I would encourage you all to hold your questions until the end. Thank you so much.
Just give us a 2-sentence what the heck you guys do.
I
want to know who the guy is.
You guys aren't bossing the meeting around. Just read. Let him go.
Usually oppose all new roads, for example. Okay? So that is
Sure. You can find information about Greenbelt Alliance on your program. Thanks. We're a nonprofit organization working in the 9-county Bay Area. So I want to start with this story. Does anyone know what this particular picture is? Yeah. Exactly. It's the area around the San Francisco Ferry Building. It's what it would have looked like about 20 years ago. It's the double-decker Embarcadero Freeway, cutting the city off from the waterfront. And here's what it looks like today. Tearing down the Embarcadero Freeway and creating this pedestrian pier.
I'm hearing you in the back, so I'm just going to point this and maybe a little closer so you can
Okay.
project.
So tearing down the Embarcadero Freeway and creating this pedestrian pier was not a given. Even after the Loma Prieta earthquake damaged the freeway and caused it to be closed to traffic, Caltrans planned to rebuild it. And a lot of credit for changing the course of history goes to then Mayor Art Agnos. He took what was still an unpopular position in proposing that the freeway be torn down and be replaced with a pedestrian plaza. And he worked with community, federal, and state partners to find a practical way to do it. I tell this story because I want to make 3 points. The first is that big change is possible within our lifetime. Changing a major piece of transportation infrastructure, revitalizing commercial space, creating a more walkable community. This is not pie-in-the-sky stuff. The built environment around us is not permanent, and we have the power to make things better. The second point I want to make is that there are moments of opportunity that change history. Before the Loma Prieta earthquake, the opposition to tearing down the freeway was too strong to overcome. But when the earthquake damaged the freeway, it opened a window of possibilities, a chance to imagine things differently. And we're in one of those moments right now, where the decisions that we make over the next year will have major implications for what the Bay Area looks like 2 decades from now. Now, the third point I want to make is that it often only takes one person to make that difference. In this case, it happened to be Art Agnos. And of course, he didn't do it alone, but it was his choice that sparked the change. And it had a ripple effect that you can still see today, from the form of people jogging at the Embarcadero, biking to work, or buying vegetables at the farmer's market that's there. Now, every community has its Embarcadero freeways, problems we inherited that we wished we could change, but we feel powerless to do so. It could be the traffic that we face in our communities. It could be a lack of housing options. It could be dead zones. Or it could be dwindling green spaces. And our goal is to find out what you want to fix and make sure that that gets heard by the people who can do something about it. So it may seem like a strange thing to ask, to come up with your wish list of what you want to see changed. And we know many of our communities are cutting back right now. But consider this. Over the next 25 years, the Bay Area can expect to receive approximately $200 billion in transportation funding alone. By being here and getting involved, you get to choose how that money is spent and how the Bay Area should benefit. So at this point, you might be wondering, am I qualified to be able to spend $200 billion? Let alone solve the region's housing and transportation problems. And clearly, many of you have sat in traffic, you've walked or biked in your community, you've got opinions on how the local bus service should occur, and you've got opinions about how your communities are developing. So if you answer yes to any of those questions, I certify you an expert. You know better than any professional what you want for your community and your quality of life. And even though you may be experts in this, you're probably not up on all of the details of this particular planning process that we're talking about today. So I'm going to take a few minutes to very quickly explain what you need to know. It's kind of how a bill becomes a law, but we're talking about how to spend the $200 billion that the region is going to be spending over the next 25 years. So, as we've talked about this morning, most of the decisions about what, how, and where we build are made by cities and counties. And we also know that what happens in one city affects what happens in a neighboring city. So many of us live and work in different cities. Some of us even live and work in different counties. And we understand that the decisions that other cities and counties make about where to plan for jobs and homes, where to run trains and buses, where to put parking lots, affects you. And that's why today we're talking about a regional approach to some of these issues. And it's why the state of California in 2008 passed a new law to help the Bay Area do a better job of balancing some of these local and regional factors. So our region's answer to this challenge is to create something that you heard about earlier today called Plan Bay Area. And this regional plan is going to do four things. It's going to create a blueprint for the next generation of growth, showing what, where, and how we build things like homes and office spaces. This plan will plan for transportation services that can serve current and future residents. The plan will make sure that these transportation and development decisions minimize traffic and air pollution, and they reduce the region's dependence on oil. And the last thing that this plan will do is prioritize how we spend those $200 billion in transportation funds that I mentioned earlier. So just a bit on the process here. In January of this year, our regional planning agencies here in the Bay Area got together and set some broad regional goals. They include things like reducing premature deaths from air pollution by 10%, focusing new development within the existing urban footprint, cutting walking and biking fatalities in half. These are goals that the regional agencies chose in January. Big picture goals. Now, in July and August of this year, the regional agencies will begin to model a range of growth scenarios like we just talked about earlier today and see how well the region meets these goals that were set in January. And at this point, the agencies will start to look at the costs. Obviously, we can't afford to do everything under the sun, and so they'll start to factor in budget implications into the scenarios to see what's feasible for the region. And based on all of the above, the agencies will zero in on a preferred scenario, one that helps the region meet its goals within the projected budget. And then by early 2013, the agencies will have a final plan in place. And if it's done right, it will put the region on better footing to receive state and federal transportation dollars, and it will serve as a blueprint for permitting new development and how resources get allocated throughout the region. So the question is, where do you all fit into this process? We are right here. We're in between the agencies having gone through that goal-setting process and doing their scenario planning. So now is the time to tell our regional agencies what to pay attention to.
What agencies are you talking about?
I'll answer questions at the end.
But you're saying a basis that I don't understand going forward. You keep saying that agency, and I don't understand
Sure.
that agency.
Thank you. The two principal regional agencies that are doing this work of deciding how to allocate these next $200 billion are the Metropolitan Transportation Commission and the Association of Bay Area Governments. And I'm going to answer, there'll be time to answer some of these questions at the end. So think about it this way. These regional agencies are going to be baking a cake, all right? And we get to tell them what we want the cake to taste like, what the ingredients are, what we want and don't want in the cake. So there are going to be three main parts of this cake that we put together, all right? Land use patterns for how and where we grow and develop, transportation investments, those $200 billion, and additional creative solutions that might not cost money or might even make a little money, and I'll give a few examples of those in just a second. The regional agency staff that are here this morning, are going to collect our input and combine it with ideas from attendees from other counties and take this report back to the board of directors that's made up of local elected officials from each county. Those board members will use the input in voting on what scenarios to model over the summer and what investment decisions to make over the fall. So this land use stage, we're going to talk a bit about the sorts of land use changes that you might want to see in your community over the next 25 years. And one of the tools that we'll use for that discussion is something called place types. So it describes a particular place where people live, work, and play. And I'm going to give you three quick examples. One example of a place type is a city center, right? So it's a mix of residential, employment, retail, entertainment uses. It's a magnet for the surrounding areas that serves as a commuter hub. And it's well served by different transportation options. So some examples that you've all been in are the downtown of Fremont, Redwood City, Santa Rosa. Another place type is a suburban center. So these are similar to city centers, but they usually have lower densities, less transit, more parking. And there's also places that are adding new houses and services to areas that are predominantly single-use employment areas. So they're often destination and origin settings for commuters with a mix of transit services connected to the regional network. So some examples of a suburban center that you're probably aware of are Pleasant Hill, West Downtown Walnut Creek, Downtown Dublin, and Hacienda in Pleasanton. And a third place type that we'll talk about later this morning is a transit neighborhood. So these are areas that are primarily residential, that are served by rail or multiple bus lines, where the transit is usually a minor focus of activity. They usually don't have enough residents clustered in that area to support large retail, but they have nodes of retail activity. So some examples of this are Central Hercules, the Wistman Station in Mountain View, and Berryessa Station in San Jose. And there are a number of other place types that we can talk about later on this morning that you'll get to discuss in the next part of this workshop here. So for this stage of baking the cake, this conversation about what sorts of place types we want to see in our communities, we need to use our imagination for a moment. And I want you to remember that story about the Embarcadero Freeway, the double-decker overpass that had been there for a long time. A lot of ordinary residents and many of the city leaders couldn't imagine that area as something different. And so to help get you ready for this next process, I want to prime your imaginations just a moment to help you see what possibilities are available in your own communities. So this is downtown San Leandro, as it is today. This is a picture from just a year or so ago. So imagine if we made decisions for this area to evolve, to revitalize itself. And we brought some new development into this area. We made a more inviting streetscape. And we enlivened this area with plazas where people could sit out and walk. So just imagine if this were how this area of San Leandro emerged over the next 20 years. Here's downtown Livermore. This is First Street of Livermore. There's a parking lot here, a pretty wide street, not a lot of activity going on in the street. So imagine if we brought up some of those buildings up closer to the street. And here, we've made it a little bit easier to cross the street, right? And we've kind of enlivened the street with some more trees here. And it starts to create a more engaging environment. An environment that actually taps in a bit more to an old small town feel. And the last example I want to give is 10 minutes away here at the Pleasant Hill BART station. So this is an area that was very recently a pretty dead area, a pretty dead zone, not a place where you'd want to be hanging out. And over the last 10 years or so, this is becoming a much more lively place, a much more invigorating place, and a much more economically successful place. And so in only a few years, we'll be able to see a place where people are able to sit outside at a cafe, have a place to live, and be able to quickly get to their jobs. So that's the first part of this cake that we're baking here in the Bay Area. The second part of the cake is our transportation investments. And I want to start in talking about this by making it clear that we can't have everything that we want. There are going to be some trade-offs. And this caveman here is saying, everything is a trade-off. Now that I can walk upright, I can't wiggle my ears.
It's okay to laugh.
Thank you. So $200 billion is quite a lot of money that our regional agencies will be spending over the next 25 years. But it can't do everything that we want. So maybe some of us want to build some extra roads. And maybe we want to have BART run twice as fast. We might not be able to do all of those things with our $200 billion. So that's one of the reasons why we're here, is to have conversations about how we want to invest those $200 billion. And as we're deciding, as we're making choices about this, we've got a lot of different options, ways to identify problems that we're seeing in our communities, and we can also come up with some interesting solutions. So one example of an interesting solution is that we can use these transportation investments to help influence how our cities grow and develop. And we could use financial incentives, for example, and offer more transportation funds to those cities that are growing in the ways that you want to see those cities grow. And the last stage of this baking a cake is creative policy solutions. So these are some of the things that the region could do to accomplish some of the priorities that we've been talking about this morning that don't cost a lot of money, might even make us some money. So here's just one example of a creative policy option. We want to fix potholes. We want to add bike lanes to roads. We'd like to enliven our downtown areas. A lot of these things cost money. So one option of many options is to raise additional revenue to implement some of these improvements by leveling the cost playing field between cars and other forms of transit. So we could choose, as a region, to charge for parking in some places where it's currently free, or driving on some freeway lanes, and invest that revenue in particular things. That's one creative solution to reduce air pollution from driving. Now, that may not be the idea that you're most in favor of. You might think that's the worst idea ever, and this is an opportunity to gather your input on those particular questions. So one other creative policy solution out there is lowering driving speeds. So if people are driving at speeds of 45 to 55 miles per hour, it does create fewer emissions per mile than driving at higher speeds. So that might be an option that you're interested in. And now is the chance in the morning to let us know what you think about all of these various creative policy initiatives as we come up with this region-wide plan. So as we talked about, there are 3 parts in this big cake that we're putting together. It's choices about how we grow and develop in our communities, as they're going to affect all of the communities that are nearby. And the second is our transportation investments, how you want to spend this $200 billion. And the third part of the cake is these creative policy solutions. If you've got creative policy ideas that might help us achieve our priorities for the region. So the next stage of the game is to turn it back over to our facilitator, who's going to lead us into a next exercise to try to get more of your ideas. Thank you.
You were going to answer some questions.
No, I think if you want
No,
to
you said you'd answer questions afterwards. We gave you the time to talk. We want the questions answered now, sir.
Just a couple questions.
Yeah. What if I want pie and not cake?
Well, this is your time to tell us that you would like some pie.
Could you just point out,
agenda.
the Greenbelt Alliance has always opposed all new road building, correct? I do not know of a single case. I used to be a member of Greenbelt Alliance, and when you said, look, we need to spread this money around, the vast majority of that needs to go into road improvements. I'm not against your designs in the center of cities, but Greenbelt Alliance has kept saying we need more rail and light rail. That's hopelessly cost ineffective.
Well, thank you. These are the sorts of things that we want to be able to hear from you all this morning.
I think it's
so I'm going to turn it back to the facilitator, who can lead us through the next exercise.
I think it's important that everybody here know this is not a government meeting. It's by the Silicon Valley Manufacturers Association. I thought this was a government meeting.
Okay.
It's not actually. It's actually a private foundation with a lot of these somewhat biased groups.
Right.
And Greenbelt Alliance definitely has a bias.
Okay. Is this thing on? Hello? All right. $200 billion, that should be an easy question. Where is the $200 billion coming from? Federal?
Not answer my question, nor answer any of my other questions, which you said
Okay.
you would.
And,
That's right.
all right, the $200 billion coming from federal sources, federal and state sources, where's the $200 billion coming from?
Hi, I'm Catalina, and I work with the Metropolitan Transportation. Hi, I'm Catalina Alvarado, and I work with the Metropolitan Transportation Commission. And with regards to where that money comes from, that's the money that's expected to flow to the region over the next 25 years. And that's represents federal dollars, state dollars, gas taxes, local sales taxes that support transportation. It's just a wide range of dollars that support any sort of transportation mode, whether it be for dollars that are coming to the region or are generated here within the region, again, for highways, public transit, bicycles, pedestrian paths. It's a big chunk of money. It's used to maintain our existing system, and it's also what we're here for is to identify this new plan and how we might utilize those funds.
Okay. Let me just take a couple. Hold on. Let's just do this in an orderly way. I want to make sure we answer your questions, and I also I want to make sure we get to our small group discussions, because that's where you guys have a chance to talk to us and to each other about some of these things that are really important. So, I understand. And I apologize. We organized all of these forums so that we could have small group discussions. We have some things that I think are going to be informative and helpful to both you and to the agencies that are organizing this, so that we can get your input. A couple more questions on a large group. Remember, Erica said we don't have a lot of format organized for the large group conversations. So let me take this gentleman in the back, this woman here, and this gentleman here, and we'll close this large group discussion. Okay, all right, those four. Go ahead.
My question is regarding about MTC, and this is for Greenbelt Alliance as well, because they put this in their summary about how the MTC must prepare an alternative planning strategy that does meet the targets of SB 375. And I'm wondering, since, what is it? Is it AB 32? The cap and trade one, AB 32 was shot down by the Ninth Circuit Court. So I'm wondering what AB 32, since that was the implementation strategy, what changes or what policy decisions need to be made because of AB 32 being shot down? Doesn't that put SB 375 in jeopardy and the whole plan of what Greenbelt Alliance and MTC and ABAG are shooting for? What's the answer to that?
I don't feel qualified. Joanna, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, is SB 375 voluntary or is that mandatory?
SB 375 is a statute that, as far as I know, all of the metropolitan areas in the state of California have decided to pursue. The Bay Area, Southern California, San Diego, Sacramento. We are all implementing this plan. It's Senate Bill 375. You know, you have a document, or some of you might have picked up a document that really does speak to what 375 is. Please feel free to read that. We really don't have a lot of time this morning to speak to it specifically, but we are pursuing the sustainable strategies.
How well can the model already basically turn down this strategy, because SB 375 is actually not required in the city land use policies in their general plan. So the fact that we already have two just a few of the ones that I've done some research on, they've already started rejecting this. So how many other of our cities that we need to show up at city councils and stuff and talk about this? Because if they're rejecting it, then that tells me, well, maybe I should do some more research as a citizen. Do I need to reject this, or do I need to ask more questions? It's just a matter of asking questions, not about predetermined plans, about how we need to reach some kind of consensus on. Right. I mean, this is freedom, right? So.
Absolutely. And I neglected to introduce myself. I'm Lou Hexter. I'm a consultant working with MTC and ABAG to organize these forums. And our responsibility is to help organize the small groups, which is may explain why I'm anxious to get into those small group sessions. But we are here today to implement what we had envisioned and what MTC and ABAG had envisioned in terms of complying with AB 32 and SB 375. So until we hear otherwise, that's what we're doing in these meetings, and very much need to get some input to provide for the commissioners and the ABAG board members. So if you feel like you question the process, I completely invite you to raise that with your local representatives. You all have representatives here in Contra Costa that sit on the MTC and on ABAG board, and let them know about your questions and concerns about this process. I want to take a couple more questions and then turn us into our small groups. And if those of you who are not comfortable with our process today and do not want to continue, we certainly respect that. We would ask that you provide us with some comments that explain that, and you're welcome to stay or not as you choose. We'd like to move into the small group so we can get some of that conversation going. And I've been listening. I think many of you are interested in doing that at the small table. So we have a couple more questions. Yes, ma'am?
An observation. We are a small group of the whole right here.
Yes.
And I don't think we were ready for the kinds of discussion that you envisioned. But that leads to the larger question of some of us do represent community groups or will go back to our cities and talk to them. How much of this information that you have presented to us, including the voting, will be available online?
Great question. In this age of the internet and websites, I think we had a slide that showed you some of the websites. All of this information will be online. The summary of the voting will be up as soon as it's summarized and made available, so you'll know how Contra Costa voted, if you will, on this. So you will see those summaries coming up. It's onebayarea.org is the main website for this effort. It describes all of the background documents that you've been handed out today, as well as where we are in the planning process. Okay, yes, sir.
I just wanted to ask, I originally had the question of how this is paid for, but it was answered regarding the federal grants. But with the expectation of it being $200 billion, with kind of the uncertainty with the federal government and what they're doing, especially, and then also with our state government, how do we know, and are we going to have to keep revisiting this over and over and over again?
Yeah, we're never
until we
done
have
baking
a
the
plan
cake.
that's not even stable because it's been redone so many times.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a very astute group, I have to say. So yes, today it looks like $200 billion. What could that look like 4 or 5 years from now? We don't know. So welcome to planning. And we do the best we can with the information that we have. And you all are really participating in this regional effort. And I think what I'm hearing also is, how does this regional effort really affect me and my local community? And that's also what we've been hearing a lot as we go out to each county. Each county is a little bit different, plays a different role in our region, has a different perspective on where and how it wants to grow. And is the region listening to us locally? Or are they just going to impose a regional view on my neighborhood, on my county, et cetera? And the answer, I think, is, as I mentioned, each of your counties has representatives on MTC and ABAG. The numbers that you've seen today were not generated by MTC and ABAG staff and imposed on the counties, but rather were part of county conversations that percolated up and contributed from the counties to the regional agencies. So I just want to make sure that you understand that you do have access to this process. You do have representation in this process. And so as it moves forward, you can continue to talk to your local representatives about your ideas and your conversations and community priorities. There was one other person that I committed to hearing from, and then I'd like us to, for those of you who want to stay, go into our small groups, and I have a way that we're going to organize ourselves for that. This lady had the last question. Thank you.
Where there was a chart of the sources of funding for the 200 billion over the years.
Is there a chart? Is that what you're asking? Is there a chart for the 200 billion?
We can follow up.
Pardon? Let us follow up with that. I'm not as familiar with all of the details inside.
How much does a planning group charge for these kind of big plans? I mean, what's the initial investment for ABAG and MTC to get this kind of process started? I'm sure that costs money, right?
Yeah, exactly. Do you know? And then we're going to break. It's 11 o'clock. We have 1 hour left. And I don't want you all to be frustrated that the small group sessions are going to be too short. So, Joanna?
SB 375 is an unfunded mandate. SB 375 is an unfunded mandate. The agencies, the regional planning agencies have taken it in their existing planning budgets to undertake this work. And I guess one of the things I want to add about, or just say about the priorities that we're talking about, or attempted to talk about this morning, is they are regional priorities. Clean air is not something that one city can decide at once while another city decides that it doesn't want. Pollution doesn't stop at a particular city limits. There are certain issues we have to address as a region. If we don't, we will not be successful. There are certain things that we just have to address as a region. Transportation is one of those, you know that.
So that boy originally said he gets off, or he doesn't get off at BART because he works at
let's go
Richmond. Am I
on.
supposed
Let's
to
go
frown
on.
on
We've
him
had enough
for
time.
not
Yeah.
driving?
No,
driving to work
exactly.
because
We do need to break
We've
into
had
our
enough.
small groups.
Is that bad for the air? No, I mean, should we be encouraging him to take BART instead?
Let's ask that at the small group sessions. Okay, please.
Are you going to compile all the answers from the small groups so we can all hear what the consensus is?
If we can finish our process today, at the end of the small group sessions, there's going to be a report back, so you'll get a chance to know what happened at your small group, at the other small groups in the room. We have a summary level kind of feedback. And there will be, as I mentioned, information from all of these workshops up online so that you can see how not only your county discussed these issues, but you can see how the other counties are dealing with it as
Are you
well.
going to record those and put them into your database?
Yes. Yeah. All right. So I'd like a show of hands of those of you who are here today from the western part of Contra Costa County. How many of you consider yourselves West Contra Costa County folks?
Raise your hands.
Raise your hands pretty high so I can see how many we have from West. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. If those of you from West Contra Costa could join table 1, so bring your voting keypads with you. You'll need those. Those of you who consider yourself from the eastern part of Contra Costa County, this is a county that has a lot of geography. So if you're from East Contra Costa, could you raise your hands really high so I can see you? Well, you know, Brentwood, Antioch, Oakley, Pittsburgh, and that I would consider that East Contra Costa. So you all will be joining table 8, and I can't see table 8. Oh, it's right over here. Okay. And everybody else, I assume, is from, consider yourselves from Central, which would be everything from basically Orinda, Lafayette, Walnut Creek, Concord, Pleasant Hill. I'm sorry if I didn't name your community. And you can join 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7. We have facilitators at each table. We have the 3 steps in baking the cake that we wanted some feedback on. So let's go, and we'll take about 50 minutes in this process. Thank you. Ask all of the facilitators to wrap it up. I know it's hard. This was the part of the meeting we knew was going to be of most impact. Okay. So thank you all very much. The participation today has been really even beyond our expectations. And we've learned a lot already without even reading the comment sheets. We've learned a lot about what your thinking is, what we can do better to explain this process and invite your engagement throughout. So facilitators, if you could all collect the materials and raise your hand if you've got a keypad. Let me see the keypads for the facilitators. I think we have 9 groups, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Diana, did you give me yours? Yeah. Do you have a keypad? 7. Ursula, you got yours? Okay, and Joanna, do you have a keypad? All right, so we are going to wrap up, as I mentioned, and get you out of here at noon. For this part, by way of summarizing what the small groups did, that's fine, yeah. We're going to ask just the facilitators to vote. Okay, so if you're a participant, put down the keypads for now. We have 9 groups, so we should expect 9 votes on these. We just want to get a read on the tables, how they voted on the priorities that we put before you. So just the first question, we had a conversation about place types. And facilitators, if you could report back whether your group felt that all the place types that were discussed were appropriate, or whether there were some that were considered not so appropriate. Vote now, 1 or 2. Okay, we have a few extras. Again, participants, put down the keypad. We're just asking facilitators to weigh in. And I think you can trust your facilitator to report faithfully on this. Okay, the second, we're not doing that question. Second question, which 4 of the transportation investment strategies did your small group choose as the top priorities? So if you could enter those now using the letters. Okay. Again, we've got 11 small groups reporting, but we only had 9 groups. That's our... Okay, so interesting. A got a lot of votes. F, expanding express bus and local bus services, and bike and ped, along with increasing funding. Yes?
This is designed to show that transit is what people want, because of the 10 cards we have, 6 said increase transit, only 2 said increase road. East County needs Highway 4 widening and Vasco Road widening. I agree. And what happens is, it's a grid, and this the charrette we had in Walnut Creek, where you have put 10 choices, you choose 4 cards, and so some of them, half say only 2 are for roads.
Okay.
So you only have 2 roads, the other 2 are going to transit, and the result is, wow, most people want us, half the people want to spend money on transit. It's false. It is a disgrace.
Okay. I'm seeing a lot of nodding, so I think we will take that input, and thank you very much. Okay. Which? Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, sir.
My group would like to know that the biggest thing we had were wild cards. We had 7 wild cards.
Yeah, we have a lot of them. Mine too.
Very good. Did we have wild card on the choices?
We did not. There were not enough options, but we do write everything down, and we.
Okay. We are collecting all the wild cards. So if you have wild cards in your group, we had a few in ours as well. We are transcribing all of those. Which of the 3 policy initiatives did your small group choose? Okay, and if you didn't get to it, then you didn't get to it. Okay, we'll see how these came out. All right, 88% had wild cards. All right, so that's a good finding. So, yep, okay. So that's a summary of what we did in the small groups, and I'm going to turn the mic back over to Erica, your MC for today. Thank you all very much.
All right, we're a few minutes before 12. Thanks for hanging in with us. As I've been saying in these forums, if you leave today feeling frustrated or this was complicated, then in some ways we've done our job right. And I just wanted to say a few words about Silicon Valley Community Foundation and why we're involved in this process. Our community foundation believes deeply in increasing civic participation and public participation, giving voice to people in matters that affect them. And we went through a very extensive public input process in the early days of our organization that identified regional planning and these kind of issues that you've been talking about as critically important. So we have been here because we wanted to see if we can broaden the participation, as I said earlier, to have you weigh in on some of these very, very important choices. Just a couple of housekeeping items. We will send a follow-up message to everybody that signed in, that gave us an email address, outlining next steps for ways that you can stay involved in Plan Bay Area. We'll give you that website. We also encourage you to go to the You Choose site, where you can look more at the kinds of priorities and scenarios that we were talking about earlier in the session and give us your feedback. Everything that you provide is going to be captured and documented and taken into account as far as this process. The keypad polling we've done, the cards, the comments on your form. One last bit about the comment form. Believe it or not, we would like your feedback on today's forum. And there's a question on the back of your form, so please jot down your feedback for us. We have a few more of these to do, and we would love to take your ideas on how they can be improved. So I will turn it over to Amy, who will say the final closing words of the day.
I just wanted to, again, thank you all for being here today and sharing your thoughts. And one of the goals of having workshops around the Bay Area is to get input from citizens throughout the region. Also wanted to make a couple of points. First of all, one of the major tenets of this plan is that it reflects how local communities want to accommodate the growing population. And it's very much based on what each one, in Contra Costa County, for example, we have 19 cities and an unincorporated area of the county. And the goal is to have these plans reflect what each of you want in your local communities. What do you enjoy about your communities, what's important to you about your communities, and how we want to accommodate growth. And how do we want to find places for our children and our grandchildren to live. So this is the beginning of a 2-year process. We are very much looking forward to your input. The Metropolitan Transportation Commission meets each month. Your city councils generally meet twice a month. And also we have, as I've indicated, the website, which is One Bay Area, is where you can get all the information on the data that's being collected, the feedback that's coming from the communities, and it's also your opportunity to share any additional thoughts you have as we move through the process. Linking onto that website, you can find a lot of information, and you can find the schedule of future meetings, which are outlined in a way to be clear in terms of what kinds of things we'll be discussing. Again, all the local cities, we're in the process right now, the window, where the local communities are giving their feedback and input into this plan. So I urge you to weigh in too with your local city council to express your views about how you see your local community adopting this, or adapting, and how their choices are, and also what you would like for Contra Costa County as well as the region. So really encourage you to contact your local elected official. The Contra Costa Transportation Authority has also given a comment letter to the regional process in terms of some of the transportation priorities for Contra Costa County. And the tenet, of course, is that Measure J, which you all approved several years ago, that talks about provides money for transportation investment. So I want to thank you again for being here today. This is the first of many conversations that we want to have with citizens, and your input is very important in this process, and we want to thank you for being here.